So the third requirement of this problem is very easy once you have the amortization tables figured out, and they ask us to prepare the journal entry for the very first interest payment that happens on July 1st of 2016 for each of the groups of bonds. And so I've got each amortization table here for each three groups of bonds, and I'll go through one by one what the interest payment looks like and how that affects the income statement for the current period. You should really become proficient in Excel. It makes problems like this much more tolerable and easy to compute, as you'll watch as I work through these problems. So what happens on July 1st of 2016 is, remember, we are the debtor. We have an obligation to make a payment to the investor who borrowed us money under the conditions of the contract. And the contract says, look, you will pay me $50,000 every 6 months. Okay, it's time to pay him, right? Or her, whoever it is. And so at that point in time, we recognize interest expense and we make a cash payment. And the amount laid out in the contract is $50,000. So this is very simple. This is to record we could even put the first interest payment for the Group 1 bonds. That's it, right? That's all we have to do. Interest expense is debited, it decreases our net income in the current accounting period, and cash decreases, decreasing our current assets in the current accounting period. Okay, that's the Group 1 bonds. Very easy. The Group 2 bonds, though, these bonds, remember, were sold at a premium, and so what we have to do here is slightly different. Let me just insert a couple of rows here so that I can make my journal entry, and remember, this is still going to happen on July 1st of 2016 because that's the contract calls for that. We're going to recognize some interest expense. We're going to pay some cash, but we got something else to deal with, and you'll see this because the agreement says you'll pay me $60,000 in cash, so our cash will be credited by $60,000. But the interest expense is only the $53,860, and that comes from the amortization table. And we kind of talked about that when we dealt with amortizing the premium, because we got this extra cash up front, and that reduces the interest expense over the life of the bond, and it's going to reduce it a little bit every single time, and so we don't have debits equaling credits at this point. Well, we have this valuation account, this contra account for the bond, the premium, and so the premium has $77,212 sitting in it right now. If we go up to, this is important, if we go up and look at the entry that we recorded to issue the bond with the premium, we credited this bond premium. So there's a credit balance. It's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and the only way to make it smaller is to debit it. As we said, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. You can see that in the amortization table. And to make it smaller, we debit it. And we will debit it by the amount listed in the amortization table. And so that goes to this premium on bonds payable. So the description for that journal entry is to record the first interest payment for the Group 2 bonds. That's it. So the Group 3 bonds are very similar, but there is a slight difference because this bond was issued at a discount. You'll see that here, right? The bond has a carrying value less than the face value. So the contract of this group of bonds says you will pay the investor $40,000 and will recognize some interest expense, which will reduce income in the current accounting period. Interest expense, and our cash goes down by the agreed upon amount. We will credit cash by $40,000. We will debit interest expense by $46,000. Debits don't equal credits. This time we have to actually credit something for the difference, right? Because we have to make them equal, and the amount is the discount amortization. We will actually credit discount on bonds payable. Might be asking, why are we debiting or crediting the discount when we just got done debiting the premium. It all goes back to what's really happening here. When we issued the bond at a discount, it had a debit balance. The discount is a debit balance. And if we look at the amortization table, the discount, which is $77,222, gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and the only way to make it smaller, if it has a debit balance, is to credit it. So that's why we're going to credit this amount. So the description here would be to record the first interest payments, if I can spell it right this time, for the Group 3 bonds. And that answers all of the requirement 3 portion of the problem.